Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today I am answering a question from Sarah, who emailed me to ask whether I had any advice on how to get callers onto your podcast. Yes, Sarah, I do have some advice. Allow me to dish it out for you now. The easiest way to do this is via a website called SpeakPipe. Essentially, it does all of the hard work for you. A lot of radio stations and the podcast network that I am the director of podcasts for, Mamamia, we have a voicemail system set up. So essentially, the dev team have set up a magical number that people can call, and as soon as they leave a message, we get an email directly into our inbox with the audio file attached. You can get the same service with SpeakPipe, and essentially the people that want to contact you and leave a message and speak and get their voice onto your podcast, all they have to do is click a button, record their audio, and that's it. There are a range of different plans, and you can check them all out at the SpeakPipe website. I'll pop a link on the show notes page. Just head to podschoolpodcast.com and type callers into the search bar. With those different plans, you'll get different features. So on some of the plans, you'll be immediately emailed the audio of the call, whereas on, say, the free plan, you might have to go in and actually access the audio files and download them yourself. I think we can all handle that. The great thing about this system is that it takes all of the fuss out of it, and it basically allows your audience a way to get their voice on your show. Do not underestimate how wonderful that is for people, not only for them to actually get into your content and be a part of a show that they enjoy, but also for other listeners to hear a bit of audio texture. It's a bit of a wanky way for basically saying just different bits of audio. So it's not just you talking all the time. Having your listeners and your audience as a part of the show actually in the audio of that show, not just you reading out an email or reading out a comment, can be a really lovely way to create an audio experience that's a little bit different and kind of moves your episode along in a more entertaining way. So how does it work? Basically, you either set up a web page on SpeakPipe, or you can install a little button that you just do by embedding the button onto your website. If you don't have your own website and that is sounding like Chinese to you, then don't worry. It is okay. You can still have access to all the features just by setting up a web page with SpeakPipe, and you can still get access to the messages there. And then, of course, you would just send your audience to that page rather than to your website. When your audience comes to that page or they click a button on your website, there is an option for them to record a message right then and there. So they can record using whatever microphone they have available and attached to the computer or the device that they're using, and they just record a message right there, and it gets sent to a central hub or straight to your email, depending what plan you've got. And then you also not only can download the audio to use that on your show, but you can record a message and send it back, and they'll get an email saying that you've replied to their message. So that can be a really lovely way, not for them to just be waiting, am I ever going to appear on the podcast? But also to say, hey, thanks so much for the message. I'm going to be using this on the show in a little while, and give them a bit of audio love back in their ear holes. If you haven't thought about this as an option and you're thinking, why the heck would I be bothered getting people on my show? Here's a couple of reasons, apart from the ones that I stated earlier, which are, of course, that it just gives a bit of audio texture. Your listeners can be the best source of content ever. You will notice, if you are a regular listener to this show, that often the content in these episodes comes from questions that have been asked directly to me from people just like you who are listening to this show and want to know more about podcasting. And a really great way to reward those people for dropping in their questions and asking you things is to actually have them featured on the show. Some people don't want that and they just want to send an email and they don't want to put their voice on the show. For other people, it can be really lovely. It can be a great way for them to feel rewarded for actually taking the time to get in touch with you. Now, with questions, obviously, when people ask you a question and you're answering those on your podcast, you're delivering delivering them something back. But if you're asking for their stories or for answers to a question that you have, it's really nice to give them the opportunity to speak that content. We often do this on a number of our shows on the Mamamia podcast network because we find that audio of our audience is such a great way to get awesome stories into the show that we don't have access to. And if somebody can tell that story first person, it's always going to be better than you trying to relay it by reading it off an email or just trying to give the points or the facts. You want to hear that story from the source, and that can be a really nice thing to throw into your episode if there's cause for it. You might be listening to this and thinking, there's no space for this in my show. I don't have the time, nor the inclination, nor do I have any questions that I want to ask my audience. And that's fine. You don't have to add people into your show at all. But often with podcasting, people assume it can't be done. In a radio studio, it's all hooked up and it's just a press of a button and bang, I can ring somebody. But often the assumption is, I don't think I can get people onto my podcast because it's just me and my recording device. And how do I plug my phone into this thing? How does that happen? So this is a really lovely way, if you've just completely blanked it out of your mind as an option and thought I can never have anybody on my show, for you to realize, actually, if that's something you want to do and you think that might add to your content, it's completely possible. So SpeakPipe is the website. I'll put all the details on the show notes page, which again you can find at podschoolpodcast.com just by typing callers into the little search bar. And that's it for today's episode. I hope that has helped you work out that you can add more little voices, fun little bits of audio into your show from the people who love it the most. Speaking of which, if you're enjoying these episodes, I would very much enjoy it if you would leave me a review in iTunes or wherever you listen to the show. It helps other people to find the episodes and to also realize that they're not a pile of crap when they see them. If you are just starting out your podcast and you want to set up your home studio and you're not sure how to do it, you will find all of that information in my How to Start a Podcast guide that you'll find at my website as well. Thanks so much for joining me. I will see you next week. And until then, happy podcasting.
That's all for today.